Of the notes is kind of an overview of the material that's going to be presented to you. And section 2 of the notes is basically just a review of what you learned in prior courses at Essex County College. And that really dates back to Math 086 for some students. So 086, 092, 100, 119, and 120. All right. Now you may say, how much do I need to remember from that? Certainly you need a proficient background in order to do well in calculus. And this whole section's about that, about being able to do that. And there's certainly videos down there, a lot of videos for you to look at if you want to, all right? One video I'm going to talk about is just a related Sage code. This is going to be in every section of the text. So it says, I'm providing a copy of my Sage input for students wishing to use Sage to solve mathematical problems. Be aware that all students should consider learning how to use a computer algebra system. Sage is a great CAS option. CAS stands for Computer Algebra System. It's free. You don't have to pay for it, all right? I'm going to just go on and point out that, being able to solve problems by hand is really what we're trying to do here at Essex County College. Your ability to, articulate your arm and your hand to paper and write down solutions to convince people that you know the basics. But I got to be honest with you, later on, particularly when you get to more professional level mathematics, a machine is going to play an important part in it. For example, my notes, if you look at my notes, for example, this was typeset using a machine, right? I didn't do this by hand, I typed that by machine. However, a lot of my work is done by hand, and then I type it up. There's graphs in the notes. I do a rough sketch by hand, but I do use a machine to get a better looking graph. So I'm going to claim, if you go to this website over here, which is the Sage website, let me click on that. That'll open up, if your computers are properly configured, to a website, and that's a sagemath.org website. You can download the software. My dealing with majority of the students I have is they have a tough time with installing software on their computer. So I'm going to say that in the future you probably should install it. And the reason for that is that you'll be using your own resources to actually run the software. And your machine's a lot more efficient than using somebody else's machine to do the computation. But I want to point out over here, you're going to see it says CoCalc Instant Sage Worksheet. And this is probably the laziest thing you could do to work Sage. You open it up. I'm going to log in. Yeah, you have to create an account. You notice it's waiting. It says access to this. I've been showing only public files. You notice it's loading. And the reason for that is it's not going to be quick to serve me because it's somebody else's machine. And there's a really good point to this. You can use somebody else's machine, but they're going to basically, deny you resource most of the time. It's like using a lot of things on the internet that, things can slow down if a lot of people are using those things, like online software is really not the way to go. And nowadays, the processors on your computers, including your cell phones, are incredibly powerful, all right? But anyway, this is still loading. I don't think I want to wait for that. So what I'm going to do is say, you could do that. I'm not opposed to it. Let me just review that with you. Oops, there it is. Let me sign in again, see if I can do it. And let's just take a look over here. I don't think it's going to let me do it, though. Let me sign out again. All right. I'm going to go to CoCalc again, see what happens. No, it's obviously down. It's not letting me do it. All right. So what I want to do is, in the future, I'll probably go back over there. Well, I'm just going to go back to Sage Math once again. And this is a really annoying thing. Like, let's say you're at NJIT and your project's due, and you need to get this thing working. And I'm glad this is happening. Whoops, let me log in again. And your deadline's coming. You have an hour to submit the homework. And the project is a really big project. You need a computer algebra system, and you're waiting, and you're waiting, and you're waiting. Ah, it finally opened up. So this is good news. And certainly I lost about, 2 minutes there. What I want to do is I want to type in these commands now. So reset. And someone says, I don't understand what I'm typing in. It's true. You don't understand what you're typing in, but I'll talk you through it. And it says reset. What does reset do? It actually gives me a clean sheet of paper. So what I'm going to do over here is I'm going to hit the return button. But I got to be honest with you, nothing happened. So what I want to do is I want to back up, hit the delete key, and I'm going to hit the shift key and the return key. So I'm hitting the shift and the return. And I want to notice that something changed. What changed over there? This little green thing over there? That means it's computing a reset. Let me do 1 plus 1. Really kind of simple, isn't it? Now, I don't think I'd use computer algebra to do that. Now, if I hit return, nothing happens. Let me back up and shift return. It's going to compute that. It's going to take some time, too, because a machine's not out there. Oh, there it goes. Get it. Let me do cosine. And this is cosine of the pi. Again, if I hit return, nothing happens except I got to return. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to back up, and I'm going to hit shift return now. What happens? I get what I expect, which is -1. Now let me do sine, and I'm going to do sine of 1 first, because they put 1.0. I don't know why they did that, but let's take a look. Shift return, and it returns sine 1 to me. Now I'll tell you the reason it does that. Sine 1 really can't be done, but I can approximate it by telling me the sine of 1.0. Now, since you took Math 120, you should know that this is approximately a number. And it's certainly, I think you get a good idea that the number's below 1 at this point. Again, you know what the sine function looks like. About 0.8, all right? Now, if I do tan of 5, let me write this down for you. I hit return, and it's not going to do it for me. I'm sorry, I hit shift return. Doesn't do anything for me. But if I type in tan 5.0, and hit shift return, it's going to approximate it for me. All right, so let me just review what I just did over here. We're talking about the related stage code. Go to this website over here, click it, and you get to this web page over here. On this web page over here, I realize a lot of students look at these things and they're kind of doing, clicking around. They're not reading. But if you just read this, what you notice is there's a book here for those students interested in getting a book. So it says Sage for Undergraduates. It's also a version in Spanish if your first language is Spanish. And again, you should feel free to read them in the language that you're comfortable with. Now, certainly I'm comfortable with English. Let me click on that, and I get to this website over here, which is more reading for me, and that's a problem. A lot of people give up if there's too much reading; they just give up, and that's a big problem in life. By the way, I realize a lot of students they go into STEM because they don't want to read, and I got to be honest with you, you're really not going into STEM unless you can read, and I just mean it's just not going to work for you. STEM requires a tremendous amount of reading. And by the way, the reading is much more difficult than reading a novel. And the reason for that, like one page of a calculus textbook could take hours or days to get through, whereas one page of a novel doesn't take that long to get through. Now, granted, you could spend a lifetime reading a novel as well, but mathematics is really, or any STEM-related subject, really the information being printed on a page is just incredibly difficult to read through. But that's part of it. You want to do that. Now, I'm kind of reading through it as I'm talking to you. And let me click on, clicking here. Let's take a look here. Oh, boy. Let's take a look at over here. I'm just clicking around. All right. So I got that over there. Let me go back. And again, someone says all about maybe clicking on things and reading. You get the idea? Just reading around. Oh, look at this. A black and white version and a color version. Let me click on the color version, see what that looks like. It just downloaded. I think you probably saw it on my computer. It opened it up, and you could scroll through this book. Now, someone says, wow, that's a really big book. Do I need to read that? You need to decide what you need to read. Now, of course, I wouldn't read the whole book. What I would be looking at is I'd be looking at topics in the book that are important to me. For example, just looking at the table of contents, it says, using Sage as a calculator. Well, for the most part, a lot of our students struggle with the use of a calculator, so maybe you want to read through that. Now, maybe it's really basic stuff. Maybe you read that and say, no, I want to go into something more advanced. I want to read about, control flow or verbosity control, theoretical, stuff that you may not know what it is, but I'm not saying you want to do that. You need to decide what you want to do. But I would start at the beginning just to get a feel for what Sage is about. So, Sage is a calculator. Again, reading through it. Again, it's a lot of reading, but I do recommend reading. I can't say this enough times to you that reading is really, really important. And you read through it. And again, they give you stuff over here. Now, I want to do another website for you and close this out. And I'm going to go back to my the Sage page. I'm going to close this out too. I'm going to close this one out here. And what I want to do is I'm going to type it in for you. I'm going to go to Sage, SAGE, mathography.org. Now, the students that have had me before know that my mathography website has a lot of resources. And this is one of the resources, and this is sage.mathography.org. Let me hit return. And what do I get over here? I get a some information about Sage that's specific to Essex County College students. And right in the beginning, it says guidebook. Let me click on that. And I'm going to, close out the sidebar. And you could read this. And, certainly, everyone has their opinions. I'm not saying my book is better than Bard's. It's not. It's not even close to it. But my book is a lot more basic. And this book has been specifically written for Essex County College students, right? So if you look at this over here, table of contents, you got an introduction here. You got let's get started. And again, I'm starting with a calculator too. So I just clicked on that, bring it right to the calculator exercises. And you could do this. There's basic arithmetic that tell you how to do it. You go through that, you read through it. And then, of course, what I like to do is I like to give you some exercises to work on your own. I give you exercises, and I give you the answer key as well. And that's important. All right, what I'm going to do is I'm going to close this out. And I want to go back to this thing over here, which is really the notes that we're dealing with. And what I want to talk about is using my own computer. Because remember what I said about going to Sage. When you go to Sage, this website over here, yeah, they'll let you use it online. But I'll be honest with you, it is so tedious. And if you have a deadline and you're waiting for them to give you a server, you may not get the server. Or they may ask for money to get the server. And this is so true of anything that's an online resource. They're basically trying to sell you something. But I've actually installed the software on my computer. And let me go to that. And I run it from a terminal. Now, you can run it from what's called an interactive web browser as well, running on your computer. But I like to use a terminal. All right. And the reason for that, it's a really slick way of doing things. And you should, going into a STEM career, learn how to use what's called a terminal application. And this is Unix right over here. So I'm going to type in reset and hit return. You notice I'm saying return now, not shift return. What does this do? It really basically clears out any things I have in the Sage from a prior session of it. And, I got that. So let me do it 1 plus 1 down and return. It gives me 2. You see how quickly I came back. Cosine of pi, return. I got that. Sine of 1.0. You notice how much quicker this is going than compared to when I went to the website and try to get them to serve it to me. And then I can put tan of 5 down. Let me do that for you. I'm just typing what I'm seeing over here and hit return. And it doesn't give me anything, so I'm going to go back and type in 5.0 now. And it gives me the approximation, all right? So that's pretty reasonable. Now, someone says, that doesn't really help me. I mean, I could have done that with my handheld calculator. We're not saying you can't. We're not saying you can't. What we're saying is that Sage is a professional level computer algebra system which will allow you to do things that your calculator could not possibly do. And that's why we're introducing Sage over here. Thank you for paying attention. I really do appreciate that. Bye-bye.